This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Rabbi say the Gemara tells us in Masechta Pesachim, and this is what we call the Rappa Yerape Part 2. On Wednesday we spoke about the going to the doctor. Remember the Ramban said going to the doctor is not ideal. For people on the highest level, not appropriate to go to doctors. Nevertheless, we spoke out Halacha L'Maisa from the Matei Moshe, and from the Tshuva Me'ava, and from the Chida, and from the Chazon Ish, that nowadays we go to doctors. Okay, and the Gemara tells us something very interesting. There was once upon a time a man by the name of Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Chizkiyahu HaMelech was the son of the wicked Achaz, and the father of the wicked Menashe. Right? He was sandwiched in between Achaz and Menashe. Right? Tana Rabbanon. Shisha Dvarim Asa Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Chizkiyahu HaMelech did 6 things. Now, if you look in the Gemara Masechta Pesachim, this is actually a Braisa quoted in the Gemara. Nevertheless, if you look at Mishnayos, this is listed as a Mishnah. Okay. Al shloisha haidulai, thou shloisha loy haidulai. 3 of the things that Chizkiyahu HaMelech did, the Chachamim agreed with. 3 of the things they did not agree with. Right? So, he was batting 500. Girer atzamais aviv al mita shel chavalon. He dragged the bones of his father Achaz on a bed of ropes. In other words, after his father died, he dragged him in the street. He was mevazeh his father. V'haidalai. Chachamim said, good job.
Achaz.
Yeah. What kind of kibbut av ha'emu? No. His father would have wanted that. His father was a Rasha, and this way his father got kapara. Fine. Kites nechasha nechoshes. He shattered, he smashed the copper snake from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. V'haidalai, the Chachamim agreed with him. People started to stray after it as Avodah Zarah. Yeah. Gana sefer refuais v'haidalai. He hid the sefer harafuais. He hid the sefer harafuais. Now the other 3 things that he did that the Chacham did not agree with was he cut off the doors of the Heichal and he sent it to the king of Ashur. He sealed up the Gichon spring and he made an Ibriyar after Adar had already ended and it was already into Nisan. But today we're going to focus on the fact that Chizkiyahu HaMelech hid the Sefer HaRafuos. What was wrong with hiding the Sefer HaRafuos? What is the Sefer HaRafuos? So, simply put, Sefer HaRafuos was a book that Shlomo HaMelech wrote, and it said like this: you have a headache, do this. You have an ingrown toenail, do that. You have a stomachache, do this. And that's what people would do. And it worked. Right? How about that? Instead of waiting in line for hours by the doctor and co-pays and painful bad medication that doesn't work, it just gives you worse problems. You just open up the book, right? Check the index. Oh, you have this. You go to that. You take that. You go to the dandelion flower. You crush up the leaves. You put it in the water. You drink it. You're as good as new.
And there was only 1 copy, and Rabbi Melech had it.
Yeah, there were no printing presses. So what was wrong with what Chizkiyahu did? Says Rashi in Masechta Pesachim, look at number 2. V'gana sefer refuos k'dachsiv v'hatoiv be'einecha asisi. Chizkiyahu HaMelech says, I did that which was correct in your eyes, Hashem. V'amrinam bebrachos. The Gemara says in brachos sheganaz sefer refuos. He hid the book of refuos. Lefi shaloi haya libam nichna al chol yom. The Jewish people stopped being humbled by illness. One of the purpose of illness, of sickness, chas v'shalom, is to be machnia a person, to humble a person, to make a person do tshuva. And why would anyone do tshuva? Why would anybody be humbled? You just open the book and the cure is right there. Okay? Ela misrap and miyad, they would be immediately healed, and therefore Chizkiyahu did not like the results of having access to the Sefer HaRafuos, and he hid it. He hid it. That is the pshat of Rashi. In other words, the illness was not having its desired effect, so Chizkiyahu said, we got to take care, we got to hide Sefer HaRafuos.
Does that mean in the time of David HaMelech or Shlomo, when they looked at the Sefer HaRafuos, people lived inordinate amounts of time? David only lived till 70. I mean, if you had the Sefer HaRafuos, every time somebody had a machla, you would open it up, and you would have the cure.
Sometimes you don't have time to open up the book, right? Okay. Rabbi said we have a lot to do. We have a 3 sheets today. Okay. That is the pshat of Rashi. Rambam learns differently than Rashi. Rambam learns Sefer Refuos has nothing to do with Shlomo HaMelech. It was not a book of cures, but rather there were certain scientists / Ovdei Avodah Zarah who they knew that if you draw certain pictures of certain things, of different stars, that would be able to heal different things. They sort of had a certain manipulation of the way the universe worked, by drawing pictures, by making images. Now, is it prohibited to learn about this? No, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that Hashem says, Loi silmaid la'asais. Right? The Pasuk says, Loi silmaid la'asais. And we learn from here, there are certain things you're not allowed to learn to actually do it, but you're allowed to learn about it for the sake of learning. For example, the Chachamim were allowed to learn about different types of idolatry. Why? Because they have to know how to obligate a guy Misa. Did a guy serve an idol or did he not serve an idol? So there are certain things you're allowed to learn about, but you're not allowed to perform. And this is one of them. There are certain images, the Rambam writes in Greek it's called telsum. They would make certain pictures, and they would know a certain picture, if you would worship it, it was good for this illness, and a certain picture, if you would worship it, it's good for that illness, and it borderlined on Avodah Zarah, and that is why Chizkiyahu HaMelech hid the Sefer HaRefuos. Or, the Rambam writes, it could be, the book of Refuos was a certain book of how to treat, they were antidotes to poison. If you take this poison, you drink this antidote. If you take that poison, you take that antidote. The problem was, people started confusing the antidote with the poison and it ended up killing people. So Chizkiyahu said, let's just hide the whole book. Says the Rambam, why do I not want to say like Rashi? Right, Rashi says this was a book written by Shlomo HaMelech and people were not being humbled by their illness and therefore Chizkiyahu hid the book of Refuos. The Rambam says, why don't I want to say like Rashi? Why do I have to invent these new explanations? To say it was a book of pictures of stars, like that borderline on Avodah Zarah, I should say Parsha like Rashi. People stop being humble by illness because they just looked at the book and they cured themselves. Says the Rambam, and he doesn't cite Rashi by name, that this explanation that Rashi gives is absolutely ludicrous and absurd. Here, a guy is sick. He could open up a book that tells you what medication to take, and you're going to hide it because people are going to stop being humble? Imagine, and trusting in Hashem, imagine you have people who are hungry. Maybe we should take away their food. Because if they're going to eat the food, they're not going to be hungry anymore, and they're not going to be humble, and they're not going to do tshuva. That's ritzicha. Right? Imagine you have people who are hungry. And we say, you know what? It's not good that you're running to the store and eating food to cure yourself from your hunger. So what we're going to do is we're going to burn down all the stores and all the food. This way you'll do tshuva and you'll humble yourself. And it's ridiculous. The same way nobody would ever take away people's food, says the Rambam, how could anyone take away a book of cures? There's nothing wrong with curing yourself. Look at the Rambam in number 3. It's about 10 lines from the bottom. The first word on the line is hasvarim. You see number 3? About 10 lines from the end of the piece. The first word on the line is hasvarim. Ba'ani. Says the Rambam, Ba'ani here basically l'cha devarai bazeh. I have spoken a lot about this. B'zeh ha'inyan. L'fi sheshamati. Because I heard. B'chein pirshu li ha'inyan. I heard others explain. Ki Shlomo chibar sefer refuos. That Shlomo HaMelech compiled the book of Refuos, that kishayachla shemadim, if anyone would get sick, ayikrenu shem chayli, or if a sickness would happen, menacholim hayu miskavein la'osu ha-sefer, they would just open up that book, v'haya oseh kamashakasa b'sefer, v'haya misrape, v'chasharah Chizkiyahu kibnei adam lo hayu soimchem al Hashem yisparach. And when Chizkiyahu saw that people stopped having trust in Hashem, he removed it, v'ganza, he hid it. Says the Rambam, I never heard something more absurd in my life. Look how ridiculous this is. Look how mistake-ridden this explanation is. How this person has attributed to Chizkiyahu such folly. You wouldn't want to criticize a garbage man that he does this, let alone Chizkiyahu HaMelech. And certainly to say the Chachamim agreed with what he did. hakal v'hameshubash, according to their mixed up opinion, ha'adam kishiyerav, if a person is hungry, v'yelech al alechem, v'yochal mimenu. Now imagine a guy who's hungry and he eats bread. Is that going to cure his hunger?
Yes.
Of course. How long is it going to take to cure his hunger? Right away. He's hungry, he eats the bread, he's full. Hachazak choli harav. Then this guy will give up hope. He's not going to rely on God. Here he's hungry. He's in a very challenging situation. So maybe we should take away his bread so he'll have more trust in Hashem. Nomer lahem. Should we say to them? We say, Hoy hashaitim, you fool. Kasher noidel Hashem ba'esa achila. This individual who has bread, what's he going to do? He'll thank Hashem for giving him the food. Shehimtzi li ma sheyasbi oisai. Thank you, Hashem, for giving me the food that satisfies me. V'yasser nosai. And that will remove my hunger. V'achaya. V'eskayim. I'll live and I'll be sustained. So too, if someone is sick, and he could open up a book that says, take the antibiotic, and he has an antibiotic, so he's not going to lose trust in Hashem. He'll thank Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for giving me the medicine. And therefore the Rambam says, this pshat, that Rashi says, that Chizkiyahu HaMelech hid the Sefer HaRefuos because people stopped having trust in God, is absurd.
Doesn't it say that the Greeks stole the library from Yerushalayim, and that's where they copied?
Ah, good. Remember we learned
Yes.
a long time ago that Aristotle went into the library of Shlomo HaMelech and he stole certain books. Very good. So, but this was one of the books, according to Rashi, that Shlomo HaMelech wrote.
Yes.
And Chizkiyahu hid it, and the Rambam says he doesn't accept this pshat. Why? What's the kasha of the Rambam? It should not be any different than food. Why is medicine different than food? No person in the right mind would take food away from someone because, if we give this person food, he's not going to have trust in God. So who would take food? Who would take medicine away from people? Says the Chazon Ish that the Rambam doesn't have a kasha. There's no comparison between food and medication. Why? By the way, look in the Chazon Ish in the Sefer Emunah B'Tachon. I forgot to write. It's in Parak Hey. The Chazon Ish says the following. Chazon Ish says on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th line in the Chazon Ish. The Haram Sham Chalak Al Pirusa. The Rambam argues on Rashi. Dula Yitachein. It is impossible. Lishlo Mibnei Adam Refuos. You can't take medication away from someone. Just like you can't take food away from people. Now the Rambam's pshat, says the Chazon Ish, where did he get it from? Chazon Ish says the Rambam didn't make up his pshat. That this is a book of different images that people would look at and be healed. Says the Chazon Ish, Aval Nira Shapir Shekibel HaRambam Hu Mekubal Ish Mi Piyish. This is a tradition that the Rambam had dating back generations. However, says the Chazon Ish, first of all, the Rambam's pshat is very strange. If it's referring to a very specific book that had pictures of images that you could look at and get healed, why would Chazal call it Sefer HaRefuos, the book of cures? It should say specifically which book it was. Okay. But then the Chazon Ish says further. Chazon Ish says, what do we learn from the pasuk V'rapa Yirape? That permission is given to a doctor to heal. Is there any pasuk in the Chumash that says, V'echol ta'achol, you have permission to eat? Okay, there's certain foods, right? But we don't need permission to eat, right? Why do we need permission to be cured and we don't need permission to eat? The answer is hunger is not a sickness. Hunger is part of creation. It's a metzius. It's a natural feeling. And eating is not a lack of trust. Eating is a mitzvah. When a tzaddik eats, that's how he serves Hashem. Right? A tzaddik learns, he serves Hashem. He davens, he serves Hashem. He eats, he serves Hashem. In fact, the Gemara says when a tzaddik eats, it's like being makriv a carbon. So of course we would never take food away from someone. You know why? You don't need permission to eat. Eating is not a sickness. Right? Hunger is not a sickness. And eating, there's nothing wrong that we need to give permission for it. In fact, it's a mitzvah. However, says the Chazon Ish, illness is not the natural state of man. Illness is for a specific purpose. Illness is why? To make a person do tshuva. And as the Ramban said, on the highest ideal level, which we may not be on, you're not supposed to go to the doctor. So then, and therefore the Torah specifically needs to give permission to man to go to the doctor.
How the English make a difference between illness that's
No.
Because we had a lot of discussion about that.
Okay, so therefore you can't ask a question, Rambam, that just like you would never take food away from someone because that would cause a lack of trust in God, so too you should not take away medication. Because although at the end of the day we are allowed to go to the doctor, but even today, the purpose of sickness is to get a person to do tshuva. And if it's not accomplishing that, so Chizkiyahu had no choice but to hide the Sefer HaRefuos. In other words, it's not really a good analogy, like the Rambam says, well, just like you would never take food away from someone who's hungry, you would never take medication away from someone who's sick. No, we don't take food away from someone who's hungry because someone who's hungry, he's not hungry because he did an Avera. That's the way Hashem created him. And it's a mitzvah to eat. But illness is not the natural state. In fact, I saw even further, when God created the world, there was no such thing as illness. Until Yaakov Avinu, there was no illness. Yaakov Avinu davened that people should become ill. Why? So that they should be able to do tshuva before they go.
Yitzchak was Kea Einav, isn't that illness, blindness? He
That-
became blind.
That's specific causes. He got smoke in his eyes, right? That wasn't a natural illness. So the illness is not natural to man. It's something sent by Hashem to get you to do tshuva. That's the purpose of it. So Chizkiyahu saw, if people had this book and they just whipped it open and they were immediately healed, it defeats the purpose of illness in the first place. And therefore that's why Chizkiyahu hid the Sefer HaRefuos, and that's why the Rambam's question could be answered. The Rambam says it's no different than taking food away from a hungry person. No, it is different. We don't take food away from the hungry person because hunger is not a chait. Eating is not a chait either. Okay.
What if there is a man, a Russian, and he's healthy all his life, and he doesn't need a doctor?
It happens. It happens. But like Rav Victor Miller used to say, it says in Tehillim, Rak be'einecha sabit. If you just open your eyes, v'shilu mas v'sham tera, you'll see the wicked very often get what they deserve. Right? You listen to the news, and this young Hollywood person drops dead from this, from that, right? Rak be'einecha sabit v'shilu mas v'sham tera. In most cases, God takes care of the Risham. Now, Rabbi, I have to add that I saw something amazing in a very interesting sefer, the sefer Tashbates. The Tashbates was the Talmud of Marami Rothenburg. When the Maram was imprisoned, so the Tashbates came to visit him in jail, and the Tashbates taught the Maram more than 500 halachos, and it's recorded in the sefer Tashbates. And the Tashbates writes something interesting. Who wrote the Sefer HaRefuos? Not the Greeks, and not Shlomo HaMelech. Who wrote it? Listen to this. Says the Tashbates, where does Sefer HaRefuos come from? Kishahaya Noach b'teva. When Noach was in the teva, hayu imay shedin. He had spirits in the teva with him, right? He didn't just take, right? It says ve'es kol hachaya, not just the chaya. Ve'es, Rashi says is marbe. Even the shedim he took on. Now, if you're on a teva with the shedim,
Why do the shedim need a teva? I mean, they could fly.
I don't know. Maybe
They went first class.
I don't know. The Shadim, the Lilin, all kinds of spirits. It caused Noach a lot of tsar. Ad shenasu rubam chaylim. V'gam imnei reach ra. Noach got very sick. The children became very sick with these Shadim. They went into the Shadim. It could be bacteria. Who knows what the Shadim are, right?
Neurovirus like
Yep.
you get on ships today.
V'gamnei reach ra. You could just imagine what it smelled like on the teva, right? Just occupied Wall Street didn't smell too good, so just imagine what it smelled like on the teva. Ad sheba malach echad, a malach came. V'lakach oisa echad mibnei Noach. He took one of Noach's sons. We don't know who. V'hevi oisei legan Eden. He brought him to Gan Eden. V'lamad oisei kol refuos sheba'olam. He taught him the refuos. V'oisam refuos kasvu b'sefer. Noach's son wrote down the refuos. V'zeh nikra Sefer Refuos. So the Tashbit said, you want to know who wrote the Sefer Refuos? Noach's son, as dictated by the angel.
Do you have any sources for this? Does he have any sources?
We have a guest from Eretz Yisrael who's asking a very good question. What about the fact that the Gemara says there's no illness until Yaakov? I don't know. Okay.
There's no illness to die from. There's no illness to die from, but illnesses there is. There's no illness that you die from until Yaakov Avinu.
Maybe. But actually, the Gemara says that even by Yaakov Avinu, when Yaakov davened for illness, anyone who ever got ill always passed away, and Elisha had a daven that it's possible to get better from illness. Okay. I want to just quickly do a very interesting halachic topic, which is also connected to what we're saying. Halacha l'maisa. You know, you're supposed to come to shul on time in the morning, right? And we know everybody does, of course. But what if Lu Yitzur, let's say theoretically, something happened and you didn't make it exactly on time, you're running late, and you want to know what should you do? Should you skip bracha? Should you skip this? Should you skip that? What about if you didn't say Elokai Neshama?
A second sheet?
Yeah, another sheet. Okay? Pass it down. What's the halacha if after Shemona Esrei you realize you didn't say Elokai Neshama? Could you say Elokai Neshama after Shemona Esrei? Why not? Because what do we say in Elokai Neshama? HaMachzir Neshama Yisufgar Amesim, that God, you return our souls to us. In other words, what? That it's a ke'en, it's a bracha for Tchias HaMesim. So you already said Mechaye HaMesim in the second bracha of Shemona Esrei. So perhaps after you say the second bracha of Shemona Esrei, you can no longer say the bracha of Elokai Neshama. And in fact, you can't. After you say Shemona Esrei, we do not say Elokai Neshama anymore. Look in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, in number 1, Im loy birech birchas Elokai Neshama ad achar shespalo Shemona Esrei, eino mevarich oy la'achar tefillah. You don't say Elokai Neshama anymore. Shekivan shekvar amar Mechaye HaMesim, since you already said Mechaye HaMesim, hu doimel amachzer neshamais, this is similar to a machzer neshamais. Okay, in other words, the Pri Chadash paskins, after you said the bracha Mechaye HaMesim, you don't say Elokai Neshama anymore. However, Uveshari Tshuva Mefaklik Ma'oid B'din Zeh, the Shari Tshuva questions this halacha, and therefore the Mishnah Berurah comes out like this. If you realize you didn't say Elokai Neshama, and you're davening Shemona Esrei, you know you should have in mind when you say Mechaye HaMesim, that you do not want to be Yotzei the bracha of Elokai Neshama, and this way, after Shemona Esrei, you could then say Elokai Neshama. Okay? In other words, if you just said Shemona Esrei without thinking anything, then you're Yotzei Elokai Neshama. But it's better if you didn't say Elokai Neshama, while you're saying Shemona Esrei, have in mind you don't want to be Yotzei Elokai Neshama, and then you'll be able to say Elokai Neshama afterwards. Umasik, and we conclude, if when you said Mechaye HaMesim, you have in mind you're still going to say Elokai Neshama after Shemona Esrei. You're allowed afterwards to make the bracha. Ayin Shamatam. Fine. And that's what the Mishnah Berurah says later on in Siman Nun Beis. Rabbi, I have the following question for you. What if a person went to the bathroom in the middle of Birchas Kriya Shema? Can you say Asher Yatzar then?
No.
It's a hefsek. So what do? You'll have to say it after Shemona Esrei. Are you allowed to say Asher Yatzar after Shemona Esrei? Why not? Well, the Mishnah Berurah says, no, of course you're allowed to say Asher Yatzar after Shemona Esrei. Look at number 3. Hitel Mayim. If a person went to the bathroom, lo yivarech Asher Yatzar, you don't make Asher Yatzar at a time you're not to be mafsik. Rak yito yadav, wash your hands when you come out of the bathroom. Ula achar tefillah yivarech, after Shemona Esrei you should make the bracha. By the way, this is the psak of the Mishnah Berurah, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Chaye Adam. However, the Tzitz Eliezer brings down, not everybody agrees. Some poskim say you can't make Asher Yatzar after Shemona Esrei. You know why? What do you say in Asher Yatzar? Roifei kol basar u'mafli lasos. It's a bracha on refuah. Why should you make a bracha on refuah after Shemona Esrei? You already said in Shemona Esrei, Roifei choylei amo Yisrael. So this.
Why is it wrong to repeat?
If you eat an apple, you make ha'etz.
Yeah.
and then you're up to your second bite. Do you make another bracha?
Yeah, but you say rofei 3 times a day.
But that's not
you say it 3 times a day.
What do you say 3 times a day?
You say rofei 3 times a day.
That's bakasha.
No, so you say bakasha second time. What's the problem?
But Asher Yatzar is not a bakasha. Asher Yatzar is a shvach. So maybe you already yotzei that chunk. You don't just praise Hashem. Can I say 1,000 times? Boy priya eis.
You walk down the street, you go praise Hashem every 2 seconds.
Yeah, but you can't make a bracha with Shem Malchus. You can't say, can I every 3 seconds say, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Boy priya eis? No, it's a bracha she'ena tzricha. It's a bracha levatala. What do you mean? I'm just thanking Hashem that He created fruits. Yeah, but we don't make the bracha unless you're actually being nene. So, how many times a day could you say Elokai Neshama? Once.
Once? Really? Is that true?
Yeah, only once. How many? Could you make an Asher Yatzar every second? No, only after you go to the bathroom. But so here, perhaps you're ready yotzei.
The first Asher Yatzar cover the whole day.
Because every time you go, if you weren't able to go, it's a sakana. Each time is a new. Look in number 4. The Tzitz Eliezer brings down the Mishnah Brura, the Kitzer, the Chai Adam, but in the second paragraph you see V'haloim Ra'isi b'Sefer B'nai Levi. I saw in the Sefer B'nai Levi of Rabbi Yerucham HaLevi, Siman Hey, Tishada Narga Be'etzem Hachtina. He throws an arrow in this halacha, Sheyuchlu Levarech Asher Yatzar Achar Tefillah, that you're allowed to make an Asher Yatzar after the Tefillah. V'Kaisev, and he writes, L'fi ani estaiti she'achar Tefillah lo yivarech Asher Yatzar, she'yatzar beberchas Rafa'inu. You're yotzei with Rafa'inu. The same way you're yotzei Elokai Neshama with Mechaye Mason, you should be yotzei Asher Yatzar, Roifei Kolbasar Mafli Lasles with Rafa'inu. Kifi Apsak Shal Apri Chadash, Shem Lo Yomar Koydem Atfila Berchas Hamachsim Neshamas, just like the Pri Chadash Paskins. If you don't say Elokai Neshama before Shemana Esrei, what? You can't say it after. Lo Yomar Achat Tefila. So too, after you said Rafa'inu, you should not be allowed to say Asher Yatzar.
Is Rafa'inu a bakasha?
Yes.
So then it's not the same as saying the bracha. You can't have it both ways. We said that the reason why Rafa'inu you say 3 times because it's a bakasha. So that shouldn't be a problem by saying Rafua where it's a shabach.
Okay.
So
good point. On the other hand, even though Rafa'inu is a bakasha, it ends with a shvach. Baruch Atah Hashem Roifei Kolbasa. Okay. You're making a good point. The Tzitz Eliezer gives a number of reasons why Elokai, the fact that we don't say Elokai Neshama after Shemana Esrei is different than being able to say Asher Yatzar after Shemana Esrei. The first thing he says is like this. The only reason why the Pri Chadash, and we're going to get one of the reasons is going to be the reason that you just mentioned. First of all, the only reason the Pri Chadash says that after Mechaye HaMesim, you're not to say Elokai Neshama, is because in the olden days, they didn't say Elokai Neshama. In the times of the Gemara, they didn't say Elokai Neshama. They were yotzei with Mechaye HaMesim. Elokai Neshama came later. But once you already said Mechaye HaMesim, there's no need anymore to say Elokai Neshama. But you have no proof where since Asher Yatzar was one bracha that was enacted, Rafa'inu is a different bracha that was enacted. Just because you said Rafa'inu is not a reason you can't say Asher Yatzar.
One could ask, why did he introduce Elokai Neshama in the first place if they already said Mechaye Mason? What did it add? I mean, for a long time they didn't say it, so there must have been a reason for adding it. So we have to understand the reason for adding it, otherwise it would have been Mechaye with Mechaye Mason.
Okay, we'll have to think about that.
Yeah, it's not concept.
Okay. Another thing is like what you mentioned earlier, and that the reason why if you say Elokai Neshama, the reason why if you say Mechaye HaMesim, you're going to say with Elokai Neshama, is because Mechaye HaMesim is what kind of bracha? It's a shvach. It's the second bracha of Shemana Esrei. Elokai Neshama is a shvach. They're both the same type of bracha. You could be yotzei Elokai Neshama with Mechaye HaMesim. However, Asher Yatzar is what? A shvach. Rafa'inu is a bakasha. There are different types of brachos. Who says you could be yotzei one with the other? Comes the Tzitz Eliezer, and this is what the point I wanted to get to. Asher Yatzar and Rifa'inu have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Why? When we say Asher Yatzar, we're thanking Hashem that He created man and that He heals all man. Asher Yatzar es ha'adam b'chachma. Roifei kol basar. He heals everyone, Jews and Goyim. Rifa'inu is Rifa'inu. Us. Who's the us? Jews. Roifei chaylei Amo Yisrael. He heals the Jewish people. And therefore these two brachos have nothing to do with each other. In Asher Yatzar, we're thanking Hashem, God, you created man in a wondrous way that man is able to be healthy. But Rifa'inu is specifically a different type of refuah that only applies to Klal Yisrael. And then the Tzitz Eliezer brings down an amazing Gemara in Masechta Avodah Zarah and the Pshat of Reb Chaim Berlin. Who is Reb Chaim Berlin? The son of the Nitziv's son. And the Gemara says like this. Look in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Right? You hear about these guys, right? They're these cripples and they go down to the south and they say they believe in the Yozel and all of a sudden they throw the crutches away. Right? Right? You read about that all the time. So, this is not a new thing. The Gemara talks about this already. Amar le Zunin Rabbi Akiva. Zunin, a guy named Zunin says to Rabbi Akiva, Libi v'libcha yodea. I know and you know. Idolatry is bogus. But you see guys who are kaifrim, they had broken legs, they accept the Avodah Zarah and all of a sudden they're healed. But I thought it's bogus. My timer, why is that? If Avodah Zarah is bogus, so how does the Avodah Zarah heal these people?
It says Mavli Kolbasa, right? Rofi Kolbasa.
Yeah, but Dafka when they accept the Avodah Zarah? Amar Lai, so Rabbi Akiva says, Emshal Chamashal Ma'adavar. Let me give you a mashal. La'adam Neman Shahaya Be'ir. There was a trustworthy guy in the city. People used to deposit things by this guy without witnesses. And one guy comes, and he deposited by this guy money or something, a watch, with Eidim. There's one guy who didn't trust this guy. He always would deposit only dafka with Eidim. One time he forgot. And he deposited by this guy without Eidim. One time he deviated from his usual practice. So now this guy's wife, the guy who it was deposited by, said, let's deny that he ever gave it to us. Because he always deposits with Eidim, and we can never deny it, and now let's deny it. He says to her, just because this fool acted improperly one time, we should lose our whole business and our whole credibility? Avkach. Yisurin bisha shemeshagrin oisan al ha'adam. When God sends Yisurin to a person, mashbi'an oisan, He makes the Yisurin take an oath. Shalai telchu ela b'yom plani. You should go on a certain day. You should come to the person on this day. V'loi teitzu ela b'yom plani. And don't leave until this day. Uvisha planis. And at this time, bal yedei plani, and through this doctor. Sometimes one doctor doesn't work, you have to go to a different doctor. Why? The other doctor doesn't know anything more. Because the Yisurim took an oath, you will not leave until this person does the cure. And through this medication. Not that antibiotic, this antibiotic. So the Yisurim looks at its watch. Monday came, 12 o'clock, by this doctor, it's time for the Yisurim to go. Where does this guy go? He goes to the Avodah Zarah. The guy goes to the Avodah Zarah. So now the Yisurim said, God, we have to leave now? We have to leave now? Dafka now when this guy went to the Avodah Zarah? Amru Yisurim din hu shelo neitzei. We really shouldn't leave now because now at this time this guy is going to the Avodah Zarah. And then the Yisurim say, just because this fool is going to the Avodah Zarah, we should not be honest with our oath. We swore to Hashem we're going to leave at a certain time. Anu noved shvasenu? Fine. That's what it means. Chaloim, roim, v'ne'emanim. The sickness is trustworthy. What does it mean, trustworthy? It leaves at its appointed time. Says Reb Chaim Berlin. Take a look in number 6, about 12 lines down. The first one line is Ra'im. Right? You see what it says V'hinei? After quoting the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, what do we see from here? That when Hashem brings illness, He makes the illness take an oath that it must leave at a certain time, through a certain doctor. Does it mean it can't leave earlier? It can't leave on its own earlier, through natural means earlier. But certainly, God Himself could intervene and cure the illness earlier. This whole practice, that God has accustomed us, that the Yisurim are faithful to their oath, that they don't leave until a certain time. That's all through natural means. Naturally, illness does not leave early. Someone who has God's direct intervention, in more of a miraculous way, what does Hashem say? Someone who merits, God could certainly intervene and heal a person. If God's going to be the doctor, the person will be healed before the time the Yisurim swore that it won't leave before. The Yisurim just took the oath, it won't leave before a certain day on its own. But Hashem could intervene. Says Reb Chaim Berlin, that's why we have 2 separate brachos. Roifei kol basar is the natural refuah. The natural refuah, it comes at a certain time, it leaves at a certain time. That bracha we make after we take care of our needs, asher yatzar. That's what applies, that's how Goyim get better. But Klal Yisrael could get better a different way. Rifa'enu Hashem b'nei rafei. Roifei chaylei amo Yisrael. God could deal with Klal Yisrael. Of course, the Yisurim won't leave until on its own, before the appointed time. But Hashem could intervene. Says Reb Chaim Berlin, V'zeu inyan shtei habrachos. Bebirchas asher yatzar chaysamin roifei kol basar. That's v'hanhagas hateva. V'hi b'yom shish b'yas ha'yisurim latzes. That's talking about the day that the Yisurim swore that it's not going to leave before. V'heima ne'amanim b'shvasam. The Yisurim are faithful. It won't delay. Once that day comes, they leave on its own. Ava b'berchas rafa'inu chayis min roifei chaylei amo Yisrael. V'hainu she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu roifei oisam. That is, God heals them. Ba'oid she'im adayin chaylim. That's why we say roifei chaylei amo Yisrael. When it comes to Asher Yatzar, we say roifei kol basar. It's the time has come to be healed. I'm blocking?
You're blocking, people really have to get out. You're not in a good spot. Sorry. Is there a program Monday? Monday morning? President's Day?
Yeah.
You're almost finished.
Yeah.
I'll be in
You're almost
Monday.
finished.
I won't be able to be here for the class Monday morning.
You're almost finished.
Okay, give me 1 minute.
Yeah. What?
1 minute.
1 minute. 1 minute. I mean, the lady is pretty anxious to get out.
Okay, we're finishing up. Birchas Rifa'inu, we finish Roifei Chaylei Amo Yisrael. Why? Because there God is healing the Chaylim, the sick people who really should still be sick. But when it comes to all of mankind, the Yisurim come at a time, they leave at a certain time. That's Roifei kol basar. God's healing the flesh. It's time for them to be healed. And that's the explanation for the Psak of the Mishnah Berurah. Even after you said Roifei Chaylei Amo Yisrael, we still have not fulfilled the other bracha. The other bracha is the natural refuah. There are 2 types of refuahs, but the best refuah is Roifei Chaylei Amo Yisrael.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.